I stayed quiet when he traded me, but I will not be quiet now.
Nico Harrison was fired after the Mavericks declined significantly following his trade of Luka Doncic.
The Mavericks went from the finals a year and a half ago to the worst record in the Western Conference right now.
Luka Doncic has now exposed everything that happened behind the scenes, revealing how that single trade triggered a domino effect that crippled the franchise and sent Luka on a comeback run so cold and calculated it's been compared to Michael Jordan's revenge tour against the Celtics. Today we're breaking down the secrets, the numbers, and the drama that only the front office knew, until now. What you're about to hear will completely change how you see this situation. Nico Harrison's firing from the Mavericks felt inevitable. After 4 seasons at the helm, including a trip to the 2024 NBA Finals, Harrison was relieved of his duties as both general manager and president of basketball operations. He arrived with bold ideas, a defense-first philosophy, and a grand vision for the team, only to make a trade that blew up spectacularly. And that's not an exaggeration. The Mavericks opened the 2025-26 season with just 3 wins and 8 losses, their worst start in years. Meanwhile, the fallout from Harrison's decision to send Luka Doncic to the Lakers echoed non-stop through the arena, with fans chanting "Fire Nico," until team governor Patrick Dumont finally decided enough was enough.
And chants of "Fire Nico," you can hear them. They rained down last night in a loss to Milwaukee, in which the Mavericks blew a 13-point lead to fall to 3.
In a letter to the fans, Dumont described the firing as a difficult but necessary move. "This decision was critical to moving our franchise forward in a positive direction," he wrote. The organization called for a fresh start, naming Michael Finley and Matt Riccardi as co-interim general managers while the search for a permanent replacement begins. Harrison tried to frame the Luka trade as brilliant long-term strategy, repeatedly falling back on the phrase, "defense wins championships," as if saying it enough times would quiet the backlash. But fans weren't just angry about the trade itself, they were furious about everything that followed. Luka Doncic, the face of the franchise, was gone. The Mavericks looked directionless. Injuries mounted. And the team that was supposed to be stronger seemed to get worse with every game. Even Mark Cuban, the former majority owner of the Mavericks, eventually weighed in, admitting he wouldn't have approved the trade himself. A devastating blow for the executive who made the call.
I had any influence.
But so just to lay things out for people, I mean, Luka's a legit, generational talent.
You don't have to convince me.
But it's
yeah, I mean, I don't get it either.
You don't get it either.
But now the real question is, how did Nico Harrison even end up trading Luka Doncic? It all traces back to February of this year, when Harrison quietly opened private talks with Lakers GM Rob Pelinka. According to insiders, those discussions went on for weeks and Harrison was locked in on one name, Anthony Davis. That he didn't see Davis as just a scorer, but as the elite two-way defensive anchor the Mavericks had supposedly been missing. Harrison insisted the move wasn't about flashy offense or star power. In his mind, it was about building a long-term foundation. About defense winning championships. Yeah, that defense wins championships line again.
We think defense wins championships, and we're bringing in one of the best two-way players in the league.
He didn't just mention it once, he leaned on it heavily. In his mind, acquiring Anthony Davis was the perfect way to reshape Dallas around a gritty defense-first identity. Harrison told reporters that every detail had been examined, that Luka's future had been fully evaluated, and that this move would give the Mavericks their deepest and most versatile roster yet. But not everyone in Dallas was on board. Inside the Mavericks front office, word spread that several scouts were completely caught off guard by the scale of Harrison's plan. This wasn't a minor adjustment, it was a full-scale remake of the roster, and many didn't see it coming. Media reports later suggested parts of the scouting department felt sidelined, as if years of building around Luka Doncic had been wiped away overnight. So why did Harrison believe this would work? There were a few key reasons. First, his background. Coming from Nike, Harrison operated with a mindset rooted in brand, culture, and identity. He genuinely believed he could mold Dallas into something different. Not just a local attraction but a defensively tough, versatile team. That may have been his first mistake, trying to apply an outside brand philosophy to a franchise built around a generational superstar. Second, Harrison reportedly had doubts about Luka's long-term fit. There were whispers within the organization about concerns over Luka's conditioning and the looming financial commitment once he became eligible for a supermax contract, which would have allowed him to negotiate a significantly higher starting salary. In Harrison's mind, trading Luka before that extension kicked in somehow made sense. But this is where everything unraveled. Mark Cuban later claimed he wasn't fully looped in on the decision. According to Cuban, when Harrison called to explain the deal, he initially thought it was just a discussion, only to realize the trade had already been finalized. Let that sink in. One of the team's billionaire owners felt sidelined during the biggest move the franchise had made in years. Then came the media reaction, and it was ruthless. Tony Kornheiser on Pardon the Interruption summed it up best, and honestly, he wasn't wrong.
It should have happened a long time ago. It's late. Okay, that's the worst trade I have ever seen in my life.
There are many who would concur.
Just a terrible, terrible trade.
By the time it all unfolded, it was obvious Harrison had gambled with his job. But the fallout wasn't immediate. He stayed confident in the decision, until the scoreboard, the numbers, and a growing injury list began telling a very different story.
The Mavericks went from the finals a year and a half ago to the worst record in the Western Conference right now.
Let's talk about just how badly things went south after Harrison's trade, because it fell apart fast. First, the offense completely collapsed. Early in the season, Dallas ranked dead last in offensive rating. What made it worse was that they were still playing fast, fifth highest pace in the league, but they couldn't score efficiently at all. High speed with terrible efficiency isn't bad luck. That's a broken design, and remember Harrison's favorite line, defense wins championships. You'd think adding Anthony Davis as a defensive anchor would at least move the needle. It didn't. From game to game, any defensive improvement was either minimal or wildly inconsistent. Blowout losses became routine, and those losses crushed morale, inside the locker room, in the stands, and among the fan base. Whatever belief remained in Harrison's vision quickly evaporated, and the damage wasn't limited to the court. The business side took a hit too. Attendance dropped sharply. Restaurants and bars around the American Airlines Center reported noticeably fewer fans before tip-off, like the usual pre-game buzz had vanished. The front office didn't help matters either, raising season ticket prices by 8.61% for the 2025-26 season, right after trading Luka. That move only poured gasoline on the fire. Then came the social media fallout. Nearly 700,000 followers unfollowed the Mavericks' Instagram account after Luka left. The Mavericks weren't just losing games, they were losing fans, energy, and revenue. At that point, drastic action became unavoidable. Now let's talk about the player Harrison built this entire plan around, Anthony Davis. Davis was supposed to be the centerpiece, the anchor, the guy who would turn Dallas into a defensive powerhouse. Instead, he could barely stay on the floor. In his Mavericks debut, he looked great, but almost immediately suffered a left adductor strain that sidelined him for 18 games. He returned briefly, playing just 8 of the final 10 games, before going down again with a calf strain. Dallas even sent him to the G League just to get controlled 5-on-5 reps. Harrison's plan was unraveling piece by piece, and there was no saving it. Davis's injury history wasn't a secret. He's always been fragile, and Harrison gambled the entire future of the franchise on a player who couldn't stay healthy. The team was supposed to be tougher and more stable. Instead, they underperformed badly. If Luka had stayed, Dallas could have remained an elite offense and a legitimate championship contender. Instead, Harrison's experiment collapsed. And historically, this wasn't some unprecedented mistake. The NBA is full of front office moves that looked smart in the moment but haunted franchises for years. The Nets in 2007 mortgaged their future for Kevin Garnett and Paul Pierce. Short-term relevance, long-term damage. In 1998, the Bucks traded Dirk Nowitzki before he became Dirk Nowitzki, sending him to Dallas for Robert Traylor. We all know how that turned out. The Raptors moved Vince Carter too early and lost a generational talent before fully capitalizing on his prime. It's a pattern, and Harrison became the latest example. Meanwhile, on the other side of the deal, Luka couldn't have landed in a better situation. The moment he stepped on the floor in a Lakers jersey, he started cooking. Luka walked into the Lakers lineup and instantly looked unstoppable. This season he's averaging 34.4 points, 8.9 rebounds, and 9.0 assists, leading the league in scoring and stacking triple-doubles like clockwork. Those aren't empty numbers either, they brought immediate wins. Since the trade, the Lakers have won 28 of the 38 games Luka has played, pushing them straight back into real Western Conference contention. The ratings exploded too. Luka's Lakers debut drew 2.01 million viewers on ESPN, peaking at 2.55 million, nearly 40% higher than the network's average NBA broadcast. His first game back against Dallas pulled around 2.5 million viewers on TNT. Luka didn't just help the Lakers, He boosted the league's entire primetime schedule, and then came the merchandise. Luka's number 77 Lakers jersey didn't just sell well. It became the best-selling jersey in the NBA for the 2024-25 season. The Lakers jumped to number 1 in team merchandise sales, and league store data confirmed Luka was the driving force. That's millions of dollars added to the franchise overnight. On the court, the highlights were non-stop. Step-backs, no-look passes, cross-court lasers, triple-doubles. NBA social media accounts became Luka content machines. His teammates felt it too. Austin Reeves even said Luka made the game easier for everyone around him. While Dallas crumbled, Luka thrived, and that contrast made Harrison's gamble look even worse.
The way he makes the game, easy for everybody else.
And Rob Pelinka, the Lakers' current general manager, took the exact opposite approach. Instead of downplaying the move, he went on record calling Luka the best player in the world.
Could not be more grateful for you choosing this partnership, the best young basketball player in the universe.
And when your GM says Luka is the best player in the world, that changes everything. Roster decisions, branding, even the identity of the entire team start revolving around him. And this is the same player Dallas thought they could just move on from. It's almost laughable, because the guy they believed they could replace with defense is out there completely transforming the Lakers. Meanwhile, Dallas? They're left with empty seats, angry season ticket holders, and the optics of a front office move that backfired so spectacularly it became a league-wide talking point. The Lakers weren't perfect at first. The chemistry still needed work, as it always does when integrating stars, but none of that mattered in the face of Luka's impact. He reversed every negative trend, lifted their offense, forced teams to rethink their game plans, and injected life into every revenue stream imaginable. When you add it all up, wins, ratings, merchandise, locker room energy, Luka in Los Angeles became the exact nightmare scenario Dallas fans feared. And the funniest part? He didn't say a single word after the trade. He quietly packed his bags, landed in LA, and immediately went into beast mode, like the last pick in a pickup game determined to dominate. That's why the clip that surfaced after Harrison's firing hit like a grenade. Reporters asked Luka about Nico Harrison getting fired, and Luka, who almost never calls anyone out, just smirked and said this.
Kept saying defense wins championships. I guess getting fired wins too.
And let's be clear, Luka's reaction wasn't just throwing shade. That was a solar eclipse. He stepped into prime Michael Jordan territory full, and I took that personally, energy. Just like MJ, Luka didn't need to bark. Jordan never complained to management when he was disrespected. He dropped 63 on the Celtics in the playoffs and let the stat sheet do the talking. When people compared him to Clyde Drexler, he didn't argue. He simply dropped 35 points in the first half of the 1992 finals and ended the debate. Luka went the same route. He let his work be the revenge. Months later, when the numbers became undeniable, he finally delivered a single line that spoke volumes. And here's the best part. His jab wasn't just emotional, it was accurate. Harrison repeated the defense wins championships mantra so often, you'd swear it was printed on company letterhead. Sure, defense matters, but there's a huge difference between emphasizing defense and gutting your franchise identity to force a defensive system your roster can't support. And the results? Brutal. Before the trade, Dallas had a defensive rating of 113.2, middle of the league. After the trade, it plummeted to 116.8, bottom 5 in the NBA. Opponents scoring? Before the trade, the Mavericks allowed 112.8 points per game. After Davis arrived, it jumped to 118.7. Even when AD was on the floor, the defensive rating barely budged to 115.2, still bottom tier. The guy who was supposed to transform the team didn't. Here's the reality. Even if AD had stayed 100% healthy, which was never going to happen, this roster was never built for a defense-first system. You can't run a 2004 Pistons-level lockdown scheme if your point guards get beat off the dribble, your wings struggle with physical matchups, and your backup bigs can't protect the rim. Harrison tried to emulate legendary defensive squads, but the Mavericks looked more like the 2018 Cavaliers, pure fantasy. In committing so fully to this identity shift, he sacrificed the one thing Dallas excelled at: elite offense, playmaking, and a generational creator who makes every lineup function. He replaced the sun and acted confused when the solar panel stopped working. You don't replace a superstar who averages 34 points and 9 assists with Anthony Davis and expect magic. Once the offense collapsed, the defense was constantly scrambling in transition, making things even worse. Meanwhile, Luka quietly dominated in Los Angeles. He hit full Michael Jordan mode, let his game do the talking, and let time deliver his comeback. And just when you thought it couldn't get any uglier, the league's biggest voices started weighing in. Dirk Nowitzki, the face of the Mavericks for almost 2 decades, said Harrison's firing was long overdue and should have happened in the summer.
What's going on to keep going this way? This move should have probably happened this.
Coming from Dirk, that statement carried serious weight. Then there's Shaq, never one to hold back. He called Harrison a scapegoat, but made it clear the GM wasn't entirely innocent either.
Hey, listen, it's part of the business. When you're in a powerful position, sometimes you become what's known as the scapegoat when things don't go well.
Translation: Harrison's vision failed spectacularly, but don't pretend he didn't help dig the hole himself. And of course Charles Barkley had his own hot take. He didn't go full roast, but the message was crystal clear.
First of all, Nico's a friend of mine, so obviously I'm biased. Nico got screwed 100%.
Hearing reactions like these isn't just embarrassing for Harrison. It's a full-blown league-wide indictment. When legends and analysts are all basically singing the same tune, you know you've messed up on a massive scale. And to make matters worse, Harrison's no-regrets era kicked off every time he stepped to the podium during press conferences.
Here was his response, quote, "There's no regrets on the trade. Part of my job is to do the best thing for the Mavericks, not only today, but also in the future."
Even as the stats and media narratives stacked up against him, Harrison maintained an overconfident, almost defiant tone, talking like he had everything under control while the fanbase was already shaking their heads. He badly underestimated just how much Dallas loved Luka, assuming they'd rally behind a defense-first vision that in reality didn't even exist.
But really, the way we looked at it is, if you're putting a team on the floor that's Kyrie, Clay, PJ, Anthony Davis, and Lively, we feel that's a championship caliber team.
Leadership isn't just about giving press conferences, it's about keeping your team and your city on your side. But despite his bold moves, Harrison started losing that battle fast. Players felt uncertain, frustrated, and disconnected from his vision. It's a story we've seen before in the NBA. Vlade Divac with the Sacramento Kings struggled to manage a roster and a fan base desperate for relevance. David Kahn in Minnesota tried to reshape the Timberwolves and ended up alienating both fans and players. Even Sam Hinkie's well-thought-out process in Philadelphia couldn't prevent eventual fallout. Harrison's story fits squarely into that pattern. A GM with a vision that looked brilliant on paper, but whose communication missteps, overconfidence, and misreading of both roster and city turned a calculated gamble into a full-scale PR and leadership collapse. Some will defend him, saying, "It takes time to build a defensive team." Classic line, but let's be real, Dallas got worse on both ends of the floor after the trade. Offense cratered, defense barely improved, and Anthony Davis's injuries made any long-term plan impossible. That's not patience, it's failure, and the numbers prove it. Others argue, the owners approved it too. Sure, they signed off, but Harrison was the architect, the face of the team, constantly pitching this vision. When the fallout came, the front office publicly distanced themselves, leaving Harrison holding the bag for a mess he engineered. Then there's the Dallas got Cooper flag argument. Exciting, sure, but 19-year-old prospects don't replace a generational superstar. Flag isn't ready to provide Luka's production, leadership, or cultural impact. Hype doesn't fill the gap in wins, ticket sales, or national relevance. And finally, the Davis can bounce back crowd. Let's be honest, the man's injury history is well documented. Building your rebuild around a fragile superstar is a gamble that rarely pays off. Spin it however you want, the cold, hard facts don't lie. The trade didn't just fail, it contradicted every claim Harrison made about building a defense-first powerhouse. So, what's next for the Mavericks? They're trying to rebuild from the ashes, piecing together something that can compete in the Western Conference again. But let's be honest, replacing a player like Luka Doncic isn't just difficult, it's almost impossible. Meanwhile, Luka's new era in LA is thriving, a constant reminder of what Dallas lost.